In a kingdom long forgotten, where the maps had faded to gray and the history books have crumbled to dust, there was a village. It was not a remarkable place. In fact, it was a place where the air hung heavy with the smell of stale yeast and wet cobblestones. It was a village of perfect, suffocating order. The sun rose, the baker kneaded his dough, the blacksmith struck his iron, and the people did exactly what they had done the day before and the day before that. They valued the coin in the pocket and the dirt under the fingernail. Pragmatism, they called it. But amidst this gray parade of sameness, there was a splash of color. Her name was Belle. She was not merely beautiful, though her hair possessed the sheen of polished raven feathers and her eyes held the shimmering depth of a woodland lake. No, her true distinction lay in her spirit. While the villagers looked at the ground, counting their steps, Belle looked at the horizon. She walked with a book in her hand, breathing in the scent of old paper and ink as if it were the sweetest perfume. To the villagers, she was a riddle they could not solve. To be a woman who valued ideas over chores, it was seen as a defect, a vanity. She lived with her father, Maurice, at the edge of the wood. Maurice was a man whose hands were perpetually stained with grease and oil, his hair a halo of white static. He was an inventor, a dreamer who believed that metal and wood could be coaxed into magic. One morning, the air was crisp, biting at the nose. Maurice stood by his wagon, tightening the leather harness on his sturdy horse, Philippe. The wagon was loaded with his latest creation, a contraption of gears and steam meant to chop wood with the strength of 10 men. "Come back with a prize, Papa," Belle said, adjusting his scarf. Her fingers lingered on the wool. She felt a sudden cold shiver of premonition, though the sun was shining. "I will return with the world, my Belle," Maurice promised, his eyes twinkling with an innocent, dangerous hope, "and a new book for your collection." He climbed the wagon, the wheels creaking in protest, and rode away. He did not know he was riding out of the sunlight and into a shadow that had waited years for a victim. The journey began well, but the forest is a trickster. As the day bled into a bruised purple twilight, a fog rolled in, thick, clinging to the skin like a damp shroud. Maurice lost the path. The trees here were not like the trees near the village. These were gnarled, ancient things, their branches twisted into skeletal fingers that seemed to snatch at his cloak. The wind did not blow, it howled, a mournful, hungry sound that rattled the bones. Philippe reared, his eyes rolling white with terror. A pack of wolves, eyes glowing like embers in the pitch black, snapped from the brush. In the chaos, Maurice was thrown. He tumbled down a ravine, the brambles tearing at his clothes, until he landed, bruised and gasping, at the foot of a gate. It was not a house. It was a fortress of jagged black stone, looming against the starless sky like a tombstone for giants. The gates were rusted iron, cold enough to burn the skin. Seeking only refuge from the freezing death of the woods, Maurice pushed them open. The interior was vast. It smelled of decay, of damp velvet, and centuries of silence. "Hello," Maurice called out. His voice echoed, mocking him. He sat by a cold hearth, shivering, but he was not alone. From the shadows of the upper landing, a presence emerged. It was not a man. It was a mountain of fur and rage, the beast. He stood on legs like tree trunks, his horns scraping the vaulted ceiling. His breath came in ragged snorts that shook the dust from the chandelier. This was a creature cursed by his own vice, a pride so deep, a cruelty so sharp, that an enchantress had stripped him of his humanity to reflect the monster within. "You are not welcome here," the beast roared. The sound was not just loud, it was physical, a wave of force that knocked Maurice back.
No.
"Please," Maurice stammered, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. I only sought warmth." "You stole into my home," the beast snarled, his eyes devoid of mercy, "and you will pay with your life." Before the old man could plead, a clawed hand seized him. He was dragged not to a guest room, but to a dungeon, a tower cell where the damp seeped into the marrow, and the only view was the uncaring moon. When Philippe returned to the village alone, the reins tangled and the saddle empty, Belle felt the world tilt on its axis. She did not scream. She did not faint. She grabbed her heavy cloak, her face set in a mask of grim determination. She mounted the terrified horse and forced him back into the suffocating dark. She found the castle. She navigated the echoing halls, guided by the sound of a dry, hacking cough. She found the tower. Through the rusted bars, she saw him. Maurice was curled on the stone floor, frail and shivering. "Papa!" she cried, gripping the cold iron. "Belle!" Maurice squinted, his voice weak. "Belle, you must go! He is a monster! He has no soul!" Then the darkness in the corner of the stairwell shifted. The beast stepped into the torchlight. He expected the girl to scream. He expected her to swoon. He was used to terror. He fed on it. But Belle stood tall. Her hands were shaking, yes, but her chin was high. She looked at this nightmare of teeth and fur, and she did not see a monster to fear. She saw a bully to confront. "Let him go," she commanded. Her voice was clear, cutting through the gloom. "He is old. He is sick. He will die in this cold." "You are a trespasser," the beast grumbled, confused by her lack of hysteria. "There is a price." "Then take me." Belle stepped forward, the torchlight catching the resolve in her eyes. "Take me instead. I will be your prisoner forever. Just let him go." The beast paused. He looked at the girl, so fragile yet burning with a virtue he had long forgotten, selflessness. He looked at the old man, a trade, a life for a life. "Done," the beast growled. He dragged Maurice from the cell and threw him into the carriage, sending him away without a goodbye. He slammed the heavy door, sealing Belle's fate. Days did not fly, they dragged, heavy and gray. At first, the beast was a storm of rage, pacing the halls, smashing furniture, ashamed of his form and infuriated by his guests' silent judgment. He demanded she eat with him. She refused. He roared. She closed her door. But slowly, the season turned. The silence of the castle began to change. Belle, driven by a hunger for knowledge that outweighed her fear, began to explore. She met the enchanted staff, the candelabra, the clock, the teapot, souls trapped in objects, retaining their humanity, even when their master had lost his. One afternoon, the beast found Belle in the library. It was a cathedral of books, shelves spiraling up to the heavens, ladders spinning like dancers. He watched her from the doorway. She was reading aloud, her voice honey-sweet, reciting a tale of knights and redemption. The beast listened. For the first time in years, the ice around his heart developed a hairline crack. He stepped in. You like the stories?" he asked, his voice rough, unused to softness. Belle looked up. She saw his claws, yes, but she also saw the way he held his hands behind his back, like a shy schoolboy. She saw the uncertainty in his blue eyes. "I do," she said softly. "They take me away from here." I cannot read," the beast admitted, the shame burning his throat. "Not anymore. The words, they are too small for these eyes." "Sit," Belle said. It was an invitation, not a command. And so a routine was born. By the roaring fire, while the winter wind battered the stone walls, Belle read to the monster. She read of Arthur and Guinevere, of tragedy and grace. As she read, she watched him. She saw him struggle to hold a teacup gently. She saw him feed the birds on the balcony, his massive hands trembling so as not to crush them. Who is he? She wondered, watching the firelight dance on his fur. The village calls him a beast, but Gaston, with his handsome face, has a heart of stone. This creature, his face is stone, but his heart is waking up, is a monster defined by his skin or his deeds. She does not flinch, he thought, terrified by the hope rising in his chest. I have been a prince of vanity, cruel and hollow. Can a wretch like me learn to be gentle? If I could just earn one smile, perhaps that would be enough to die with. They were changing. Virtue was taming vice. Humility was replacing pride. But the world outside hates what it does not understand. In the village, Maurice had pleaded for help, but Gaston, a man whose muscles were as large as his ego, and whose heart was a shriveled pit of greed and jealousy, saw only an opportunity.
And a little persuasion.
If he killed the beast, he would be the hero. He would force Belle to marry him. "The beast will steal your children," Gaston lied to the crowd, his voice dripping with venom. "He will burn our village. We must kill him." Fear is a powerful fuel. The villagers, blind with panic, lit their torches. The mob moved like a river of fire through the forest, chanting for blood. They stormed the castle. The heavy doors splintered. The enchanted objects fought bravely, defending their home. But Gaston sought only the master. He found the beast in the west wing. The beast stood by the balcony, looking out at the rain. He did not raise a fist. Belle had been released days prior to tend to her father, a final act of selfless love from the beast, and without her, he had no will to fight. He was ready to end. Gaston struck him. The club smashed against the beast's ribs. The beast collapsed. "Get up!" Gaston taunted, kicking him. "Fight back, you monster!" Then a voice cut through the storm. "No! Stop!" It was Belle. She had returned, riding Philippe through the chaos. Strength, sudden and fierce, surged through the beast. She had come back. He was not unlovable. He grabbed Gaston by the throat, dangling him over the abyss. The beast's eyes flashed with his old fury, ready to drop the villain. But then he looked at Belle. He saw the horror in her eyes. He remembered the books. He remembered the birds. He pulled Gaston back. "Get out," the beast whispered. "I am not like you." He threw Gaston aside. Mercy, the ultimate virtue. But vice knows no honor. As the beast turned to reach for Belle, Gaston drew a hidden dagger and plunged it into the beast's back. The roar of pain shattered the night. In his flailing malice, Gaston lost his footing on the slick, rain-soaked stones. He fell, screaming, into the mist of the gorge below, swallowed by his own hatred. The beast collapsed on the balcony. His breath came in shallow, rattling rasps. Belle fell to her knees, disregarding the mud and the blood, pulling his heavy, furred head into her lap. The last petal of the enchanted rose, kept under glass, hovered, ready to fall. "You came back," the beast whispered, his voice sounding like dry leaves. "Of course I came back," Belle sobbed, her tears tracking hot paths through the dust on his face. "I couldn't let them hurt you." "It is better this way," he smiled weakly, his hand heavy in hers. "I lived my life as a fool, but I die knowing what it is to be loved." The light in his eyes began to fade. The great chest stopped moving. "No," Belle whispered. She leaned down and kissed his cold, furred forehead. "No, please, I love you." The last petal fell. Silence stretched, absolute and terrible. Then the air shimmered. A golden light, brighter than the sun, exploded from the heavens. It washed over the balcony. The rain turned to glowing mist. Under Belle's hands, the coarse fur dissolved into silk. The claws retracted into strong fingers. The jagged horns melted away. When Belle opened her eyes, shielding them from the brilliance, the monster was gone. In his place lay a man, a prince. He was human, alive and whole. He opened his eyes, and they were the same deep, uncertain blue she had come to know by the fire. "Belle?" he asked, his voice clear and resonant. "It is me."
"It is you.
The curse was broken, not by magic, but by the courage to love what is unlovable. The castle groaned as the stone warmed, the gloom melting away into golden sunlight. The servants regained their forms, the teapot became a mother, the clock a fussy steward. And so they were married, not because he was a prince, and not because she was beautiful. They were married because they had seen the worst in each other and stayed. They were married because she taught him kindness, and he taught her that she was not alone. And thus, my friends, we leave them. They lived happily ever after, in a home built not of stone, but of understanding. Remember this tale when you walk through the world. The truest beauty is not found in the mirror, but in the choices we make. It is found in the hand extended in mercy, and the heart brave enough to see the man inside the beast.